I must stop Christmas from coming.
A green monster living alone on a mountain. A heart 2 sizes too small. A plan to murder Christmas itself. In 1966, Dr. Seuss allowed his beloved book to become a television special and almost immediately regretted it. What should have been a simple holiday cartoon became a battlefield of egos and creative vision. The result was something nobody expected. A masterpiece that terrified children and made adults cry. But the story behind those 26 minutes is darker than anything the Grinch ever did. Betrayals happened. Friendships ended. And one man's voice changed Christmas forever. Stay with me, because these 20 facts will blow your mind. Before we dive into video, please subscribe to our channel. Fact 1. Dr. Seuss hated the songs and tried to cut them. Dr. Seuss did not want any songs in the special. His book was perfect as written. Adding musical numbers seemed cheap and gimmicky to him. But composer Albert Haig convinced Chuck Jones that songs were necessary to fill the runtime. When Seuss heard the demos, he was furious. He thought they were too Broadway, too schmaltzy. He demanded they be removed immediately. Jones and the producers staged an intervention. They played the songs again, explaining how each served the story. Seuss remained unconvinced until he heard, "You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch." Something about that song broke through his resistance. The meanness, the insult comedy, the way it cataloged the Grinch's disgusting qualities. That felt right to him. He approved that one song and grudgingly allowed the others. Now those songs are inseparable from the special. Imagine the Grinch without You're a Mean One. Boris Karloff was dying during production. Boris Karloff was 79 years old when he recorded his narration. He was suffering from chronic emphysema and terrible arthritis. He could barely walk. He was in constant pain. The studio brought in special equipment to make him comfortable during recording sessions. He would record for short bursts, then need long breaks to recover. Some days he could only work for an hour. The producers were terrified he would die before completing the project. Karloff knew he was dying. He talked about this special as one of his final gifts to the world. He had spent his career playing monsters. Frankenstein, The Mummy, countless horror roles. But he wanted to leave something warm behind. Something children would love instead of fear. His narration has a grandfatherly quality, a kindness that comes through even when describing terrible deeds. That warmth was intentional. Karloff's last act of generosity. Fact 3. Chuck Jones animated the Grinch to move like a cat. Chuck Jones was obsessed with making the Grinch move in a way that felt wrong and unsettling. He studied his own cat for weeks. Cats move with liquid grace but also sudden violence. They can be lazy then, explosive. Jones wanted the Grinch to have that same quality. Watch the special again and notice how the Grinch slinks and pounces. How he goes from stillness to manic energy instantly. That is cat movement. Jones even gave the Grinch a cat-like face when he smiles. The way his eyes narrow. The sharpness of his grin. It makes the character feel predatory, even when standing still. Dr. Seuss approved enthusiastically. He loved that the Grinch felt like a wild animal barely controlling himself. It added threat that the book could only suggest. Animation made the Grinch terrifying in motion. Children were scared. That was the point. Redemption means nothing if the villain is not genuinely frightening first. Fact 4. The famous song was voiced by someone pretending to be Karloff. You're a Mean One. Mr. Grinch is sung by Thurl Ravenscroft. He was the voice of Tony the Tiger, but his name does not appear in the original credits. For years, people thought Boris Karloff sang it himself. Karloff had a distinctive voice, and Ravenscroft was imitating it perfectly. The deception was not intentional. It was a credit mistake. Ravenscroft's name was simply left off by accident. By the time anyone noticed, the special had already aired and the myth had taken hold. Karloff reportedly felt terrible about it. He tried to correct the record in interviews, but people still assumed he sang it. Ravenscroft never complained publicly. He was a professional, but decades later he admitted it had hurt. He had created one of the most iconic villain songs in television history and received no credit. The oversight was eventually corrected. His name was added to later releases. But for 20 years, millions had no idea who actually sang those brilliant insults. Fact 5. Dr. Seuss wrote new material specifically for the special. The book, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, is very short. Only about 1,700 words. That translates to roughly 8 minutes of screen time. The special needed to be 26 minutes to fill a half-hour slot with commercials. Dr. Seuss was protective and refused to let anyone else expand the story. So he locked himself away and wrote new Seussian rhymes to pad the narrative. The extended sequences of the Grinch preparing his costume and loading his sleigh are all Seuss original additions. The material is seamless. You cannot tell what was in the book and what was written for television. That is because Seuss was a perfectionist. He rewrote his new sections dozens of times to match the rhythm and tone of the original. He wanted the special to feel like the book simply brought to life. Not adapted, not changed, just extended. He succeeded completely. Fact 6. Max the dog was almost cut from the story. Early script drafts minimized Max the dog. Executives thought he was unnecessary. The Grinch could accomplish everything alone. Why complicate things with an animal sidekick? Chuck Jones fought to keep Max and expand his role. He understood that Max was essential. The Grinch needed someone to be cruel to. Someone to demonstrate his meanness in action. Yelling at a dog is instantly villainous. It shows character without dialogue. Jones also knew Max would provide sympathy. The audience needed someone to root for besides the Who's. Max became the emotional anchor. When the Grinch makes Max pull the sleigh up the mountain, you feel the injustice. When Max's sad face appears, you want to rescue him. And when the Grinch heart grows and he is kind to Max for the first time, you feel the redemption. Max barely has lines or actions, but his presence makes the entire story work. Jones knew this. The executives did not. Fact 7. The Who designs were controversial. Dr. Seuss illustrated the Who's in his book with very simple shapes. Chuck Jones had to create full animation models and make design choices Seuss never specified. The Who's Jones created had weird upturned noses and strange hair and oversized mouths. When Seuss saw them, he was unsure. They looked more grotesque than he imagined. Jones argued that the Who's needed to look unusual to match the Grinch's strangeness. If they looked like normal humans, the contrast would not work. Everything in Whoville needed to feel off-kilter and fantastical. Seuss eventually agreed, but he never fully embraced the designs. In later books, he would depict Who's differently, more cute, less alien. The 1,966 designs remain the most unsettling version ever put on screen. They look like they belong in a fever dream. That strangeness actually helps the special. Whoville does not feel like a real place. It feels like a fable happening in some twisted Christmas dimension. Fact 8. The roast beast was inspired by a Thanksgiving turkey. The most iconic shot in the special is the Grinch reaching for the roast beast. That enormous steaming roast surrounded by side dishes. It looks delicious and absurd simultaneously. The animators based it on a Norman Rockwell Thanksgiving painting. They wanted the roast beast to represent idealized American holiday plenty. The exaggerated size, the perfect golden brown color, the way steam rises in decorative swirls. It is food as fantasy, food as symbol. The Grinch stealing the roast beast is not just theft. It is an attack on abundance and celebration and togetherness. All the things he has rejected. The animators spent days getting that shot perfect. The lighting, the composition, the way the Grinch fingers creep into frame. It had to be beautiful and wrong at the same time. They succeeded. That single image has been reproduced on merchandise for 50 years. People recognize it instantly, even if they have not seen the special in decades. Fact 9. The special almost got a sequel that never happened. After the massive success of the 1,966 special, the studio immediately wanted a sequel. They approached Dr. Seuss about creating a new Grinch story. What happens after his heart grows? Does he live in Whoville now? Does he struggle to fit in? Seuss refused completely. He said the Grinch story was finished. Adding more would cheapen it. The redemption meant something because it was final. Dragging the character through more adventures would turn him into a franchise instead of a fable. The studio offered enormous amounts of money. Seuss still refused. He had creative control written into his contract, and he used it. This decision preserved the purity of the special. How the Grinch Stole Christmas stands alone. It does not need a sequel or a cinematic universe. It tells one perfect story and ends. Decades later, other people would create Grinch sequels and live-action movies. But none had Seuss' blessing. Fact 10. Karloff refused to voice the Grinch dialogue. Boris Karloff narrated the special, but he did not voice the Grinch speaking parts. When the Grinch talks to himself or to Max, a different actor provided the voice. Karloff was asked to do both roles, but he refused. He said it would confuse the audience. The narrator needed to be a separate presence, a storyteller outside the action. If the same voice narrated and also spoke as the Grinch, the boundary between story and teller would collapse. Karloff understood something essential about narration. The voice must be trustworthy and removed. It guides you through the tale but does not become part of it. This created a strange, dual quality. Karloff's warm narration describes the Grinch actions, while a harsher voice speaks the Grinch thoughts. It should feel disjointed, but it works. The narration feels like memory, like someone telling you a story about something that happened long ago. The Grinch voice feels immediate and present. The contrast creates depth. Fact 11. The animation took over 10 months to complete. Television animation in the 1,960 seconds was usually cheap and fast. Limited movement, reused cells, shortcuts everywhere. Chuck Jones refused to work that way. He insisted on theatrical quality animation for the Grinch. Every frame needed to be beautiful. Every movement needed to be smooth. This was insanely expensive and time-consuming. The special took over 10 months to animate. A typical TV cartoon took 6 weeks. The network panicked. The budget spiraled. Jones did not care. He was using television money to create art. He personally supervised every scene. He redrew animations he felt were not good enough. He demanded perfection from his team. Many animators were exhausted and frustrated, but they knew they were creating something special. You can see the care in every shot. The way characters move with weight and personality. The detailed backgrounds. The subtle facial expressions. This was feature film quality animation on a television budget. It nearly bankrupted the production. But it resulted in a special that looks timeless. Fact 12. The Grinch costume design took weeks to finalize. Designing how the Grinch would look in his Santa disguise became a major creative challenge. Chuck Jones drew dozens of versions. Too realistic and it was not funny. Too silly and it undercut the menace. The costume needed to be obviously fake to the audience, but convincing enough that the Whos would be fooled. The final design is a masterpiece of visual comedy. The coat that does not quite fit. The beard that looks like cotton stuck to his face. The hat that is slightly wrong. Every element signals deception. When you see the Grinch in costume, you immediately know he is up to no good. But the Whos see what they expect to see. Fact 13. Cindy Lou, who was aged up from the book. In the original book, Cindy Lou, who is no more than 2. In the special, she appears to be around 6 or 7. This change was intentional. A 2-year-old character would be difficult to animate with personality. She would also be less capable of meaningful interaction with the Grinch. By aging her up, the creators made her more aware, more capable of questioning what she sees. When Cindy Lou asks why Santa is taking the tree instead of leaving presents, it is a real question. Fact 14. The special premiered against a major football game. How the Grinch Stole Christmas premiered on CBS on December 18, 1966. The network scheduled it against a major NFL game on another channel. This was considered a death sentence. Football dominated ratings. Nobody thought a cartoon could compete. But something unexpected happened. Families chose the Grinch. Parents wanted their children to see it. The special won its time slot. The ratings were spectacular. CBS had accidentally discovered something powerful. Holiday specials could compete with sports if they were good enough. This changed television programming forever. Networks started investing in quality Christmas content. Fact 15. Dr. Seuss cried when he saw the finished special. Dr. Seuss fought with Chuck Jones throughout production. He micromanaged. He demanded changes. He threatened to pull his support multiple times. But when he finally saw the completed special in a screening room, he broke down crying. His wife was with him, and she later described how he sat in silence for several minutes after it ended. Then he turned to Chuck Jones and apologized. He said he understood now. Jones had not betrayed his vision. He had enhanced it. The animation brought depth and emotion that the book could only suggest. The music added power. Fact 16. The heart-growing scene used a controversial technique. The moment when the Grinch heart grows 3 sizes is the emotional climax. Chuck Jones wanted it to be visually spectacular. He used a technique called rotoscoping where animators trace over live-action footage. This was considered cheating by animation purists. Real animators drew everything by hand. Rotoscoping was a shortcut. But Jones did not care about purity. He cared about impact. The heart growing needed to look organic and real. Rotoscoping gave it weight and presence. The technique allowed for subtle movements and textures that would be nearly impossible to animate traditionally. The result is one of the most memorable moments in animation history. Fact 17. The Who singing was recorded by a professional choir. The Who's gathering to sing on Christmas morning needed to sound perfect. The production hired the MGM Studio Choir. These were professional singers who had recorded for countless films. They were instructed to sing with childlike innocence and joy, to sound like people who had no reason to sing except pure happiness. The choir struggled with this. Professional singers are trained to perform, to project, to add technique and style. But Jones wanted the opposite. He wanted singing that sounded unrehearsed and spontaneous. It took multiple sessions to get the right sound. The breakthrough came when the director told them to sing like they were singing for themselves, not for an audience, just expressing joy with no performance. Fact 18. The sled scene was the most dangerous to animate. The climactic scene where the Grinch tries to push the sled off Mount Crumpet and then has to save it when his heart changes was a nightmare to animate. The sled is enormous and packed with stolen items. It needs to feel heavy and unstable. The momentum as it teeters on the edge needed to create genuine tension. Chuck Jones demanded multiple revisions. The physics had to be believable. If the weight and movement looked wrong, the entire climax would fail. Animators created detailed charts of how the sled would shift and balance. They studied footage of real sleds on inclines. The Grinch grabbing the sled and being pulled backward needed to show his sudden desperation. His change of heart is not slow and contemplative. It is immediate and physical. He throws his body into saving what he tried to destroy. Fact: Boris Karloff never met Chuck Jones in person. Despite creating this masterpiece together, Boris Karloff and Chuck Jones never actually met face-to-face during production. Karloff recorded his narration in a sound studio. Jones worked in the animation building. Their schedules never aligned. They communicated through assistants and phone calls. Karloff would record sections and Jones would listen to playback and send notes. They developed enormous respect for each other without ever sharing a room. After the special aired, they finally met at a CBS party. They embraced like old friends. Karloff told Jones he was a genius. Jones told Karloff he was the heart of the special. They spent the evening talking about art and process and what makes a story resonate. Both men said later that the lack of in-person collaboration might have helped. Fact 20. There is a lost alternate ending that was never used. Very few people know this, but Chuck Jones animated an alternate ending that was cut before the final broadcast. In this version, after the Grinch returns everything to Whoville, he does not stay for the feast. He watches from a distance on the mountain. Cindy Lou, who sees him and waves. He waves back. Then he returns to his cave alone. The implication is that he has changed, but he is not yet ready to join society. Redemption is a process, not an instant transformation. Dr. Seuss saw this ending and hated it. He said it was too sad and ambiguous. The story needed the Grinch fully integrated into the community. Eating roast beast, carving, being celebrated, anything less felt incomplete. Jones argued for the subtlety of the alternate ending, but Seuss would not budge. The ending you know is the one Seuss demanded. The Grinch sitting at the head of the table. Fully redeemed, fully accepted. The alternate ending was cut, and the footage was stored in the MGM archives. In 2019, an archivist found it during a routine cataloging project. A few seconds of animation showing the Grinch alone on the mountain waving goodbye. It has never been officially released, but it exists. A ghost of what the special almost was. A reminder that every creative choice matters, and sometimes the right decision is to choose hope over ambiguity. This lost footage represents the road not taken.